Welcome back, guys. Today I want to go through my 2024 AFC predictions that I did earlier this year. It's been a minute since you last heard from me. Basically rage quitting on the season, and it's been a month. Took some time, calmed down. But first, we're going to talk about the AFC predictions that I made last year, like I already said. And not going to waste any time any further. Let's take a look. And let's start off with the Buffalo Bills, winners of the AFC East. They went 13 and 4, only suffering losses from the Ravens, Texans, Rams, and Patriots. They also made it all the way to the AFC Championship, where they sadly came up short yet again to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the prediction that I had for them was 11 and 6. And the reason why I had them at 11-6 was because I was unsure of their wide receivers, and that ended up being part of their downfall. As Amari Cooper, he showed his age. Keon Coleman, he had some growing pains, but at least Shakir had a breakout season that landed him a new contract. But the losses, okay, I had them losing to the Dolphins. I had them losing to the Ravens, Texans, Jets. I had them at a 2-4 start. Then I had them getting on a roll second half of the season before losing to the 49ers coming out of a bye and then losing to the Lions in that game. But 11-6, that was not too far off of my original prediction. You'll see later on, there are some teams that I were way off on. And the Dolphins, they're the next team on this list. I had them at 8-9. Well, no, I didn't have them at 8-9. They went 8-9. And most their season was pretty much over when Tua suffered yet another concussion early in the season, and that's why they got off to a 2-3 start. But then again, when Tua came back, which was I want to say it was right around week 8 or week 7 when he came back. I was not sure when he came back. Looking back on it, but once he came back, pretty much the season was too little, too late. They won a couple games here and there. Like they beat the Rams on the road for Monday night. They beat the Jets at home. They beat the 49ers, but the 49ers, they were pretty much a starting janitors and their fifth string wide receiver water boy at that point. So what record did I have the Dolphins? I had them at 11-6, which included a 4-0 start. So yeah, I was kind of off with the Miami Dolphins, but then again, Tua didn't get hurt, so that could have been their ceiling. I went off the ceiling instead of the floor. So for the Dolphins, I had them at 11-6. I was pretty off on that. This is the team that I was pretty much the most off on. Jets went 5-12. They went 2-1, and they felt like things were gonna go okay, I guess. Then they started losing a lot of games. Fired their coach Robert Saleh, added Devontae Adams, thinking that'll fix all their problems, and that didn't fix pretty much nothing. And the rest of the season was just a waste. Drama here and there. Aaron Rodgers pretty much checked out, and the general manager, who basically came in and thought he had a contending team, they realized the Jets were the Jets. And you will not believe what record I had the Jets was. I had them at 12-5, number one seed in the AFC. I will probably never, ever, ever live that down. Goes to show you that you should never believe in the Jets as they begin their rebuild. Never trust the Jets because they'll always let you down. And never trust the Jets because, well, they're the Jets. But anyway, the only losses I had them losing to was the 49ers. I had them losing to the Seahawks for some reason. Splitting with the Dolphins, splitting with the Bills, sweeping the Patriots. That's what went down with the Jets. Let's move on to the New England Patriots. And the Patriots, they went 4-13, kind of predictable because let's be real, that team was in a rebuild situation. But towards the end of the season, they started to look like really, really bad, and it cost Gerard Mayo his job. So, what record did I have them? I had them going I actually had them going a lot worse. I actually had them at 3-14, and I got none of their wins correctly. Their first win came against the Bengals. I did not predict that. They also beat the Jets at home. They beat the Bears on the road, and they beat the Bills at home. Only because the Bills was resting starters. I probably should have saw that last one coming. But the fact that I did not get not one single win out of the Patriots correct is telling. And now we're on to the AFC North, where the Baltimore Ravens went 12-5. Despite overcoming an 0-2 start, the Ravens got things going, especially after their bye week, with getting wins over division foes, the Steelers and the Browns. They also beat the Houston Texans, and they won a playoff game again against the Steelers. Now, the record I had them going slightly under 11-6, so I was about even on what the Ravens were going to do. I might have had some of their wins wrong. I mean, I had them splitting with all of their division opponents, but they wound up sweeping the Bengals. And for some reason, I had them losing to the Giants. Yeah, not my brightest moment. But still, 11-6, 12-5, not much of a drop off. And now we have the Cincinnati Bengals, which they went 9-8, and they ripped off 5 straight wins to close the year. But it was not enough for them to make the playoffs. They could not overcome that 1-4 start to the season. And you want to know what to blame for their start? Their defense. Their defense was beyond bad the first, pretty much pre-bye week. Post-bye week, they got better. They got a little better as the season went on, but again, when it got better, it was too little, too late. It was pretty much Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, maybe T. Higgins, and everyone else. Also, shout out Trey Hendrickson. And the record I had the Bengals, yeah, 12-5. I thought the Bengals were going to be back in contention. I thought, they had I thought they had an underrated defense, but for some reason the Bengals just loved to bungle. And I only had them suffering a bit of a mid-season crutch, which was against the Ravens, Chargers, Steelers, and Cowboys. I had them losing to the Cowboys. But 12-5, I feel like the pressure will be on for Cincinnati in 2025 to get back to the postseason after 2 straight years of missing out. And we're looking glaring right at you, Zach Taylor. Now we have the Cleveland Browns, and oh boy, they went 3-14, and it was an ugly 3-14. And I just watched a video on someone who did a video talking about the Browns season. It said their 3-14 wasn't different from a New England Patriot type 3-14. Like when the Patriots went 3-14, they all kind of, or 4-13, whatever their record was, they were like, okay, we kind of expected that. We're a rebuilding team. But the Browns, they weren't a rebuilding team. They had an elite defense. They had a good few pieces on offense. They had an offensive line that could be great if they could all stay healthy. But a lot of people want to shoulder the blame on Deshaun Watson, which, yeah, he was pretty terrible. But once he got hurt, Jameis Winston was slightly better. But again, it did not result into the dubs. And the record I have the Browns going 7-10, which is which is still a disappointment. But at the same time, it's a far cry of what 3-14 was. I had them losing the last 3 games of the season. And I also had them splitting with the Steelers. I did call that. I had them splitting with the Ravens. And I also had them splitting with the Bengals, which ironically that didn't happen. Bengals finally swept the Browns for the first time in what seems like forever. But yeah, Cleveland Browns 7-10. Yeah, everyone's pretty disappointed. 10-7 was the record for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and most of their season went like this. They fluked their way to several wins, winning games that they aren't really supposed to. It's the Steeler way, get a winning record because Mike Tomlin needed that winning record because for the Steelers, that's their Super Bowl. And then they collapse in the end, make the playoffs, nothing changes. That's pretty much the Steelers' MO. But yeah, the Steelers got off to a very hot start, going, I believe that's 9-2 to start the season, only suffering losses to the Colts and the Cowboys, and with the latter being in prime time. They didn't face off a divisional opponent all the way to week 11. I feel like the schedule committee really messed this up, and but they ended their season on a collapse, losing to their in-state rivals, the Eagles, losing to the Ravens, losing to the Chiefs, and losing to the Bengals. And the Steelers, they looked very lethargic on all of their last four losses. And the record that I had the Steelers was, I actually had them with the losing record this year. I had them going 8-9 to start the season. I mean 8-9 for the season because I did not know it was going to be Fields. Was it going to be Wilson? Was Wilson going to carry on? Was Wilson going to have the Denver woes bringing into Pittsburgh, or he's going to be feel rejuvenated? And last year we had a bit of both. But I pretty much had them splitting their divisional opponents. And when they tried to get a winning record, it was pretty much too little, too late. So 8-9, that is kind of a far cry of what I had compared to what they were. So there you go. Y'all can laugh at it. Now on to the Houston Texans. Another season where they went 10-7 and won a very, very poor AFC South. I thought the South was going to do something this season, but boy, was I wrong. But the Texans themselves, they weren't that much great. Sure, they won a playoff game against the Chargers, but they ended up losing to the Chiefs because, well, let's be real, losing to the Chiefs in the playoffs is inevitable in the AFC, despite how strong that conference is. But yeah, looking at the Texans' record, some of their losses are a bit explainable, but I will say losing to the Titans at home is inexcusable. I'll also say the Viking loss early in the season was pretty bad, but I kind of did call it that when I did my in-season predictions, regular season predictions when I did at week 3. I could check that video out. But the Texans record that I had them at, what do you know? It's one of the first team I have correct. I correctly predicted them going 10-7. They went 10-7. Now I don't know how I had what I have for them in the playoffs, but this is pretty accurate. I could pat myself in the back with this one. Although having them lose to the Cowboys on Monday night was telling. Also, them going on a 3-game losing streak post bye week, I almost had that right. So yeah, 10-7 for the Houston Texans. Good job. Now I got the Indianapolis Colts. I had them at 8-9. They went 8-9 last season, and they went. But the Colts 8-9 was kind of a weird one. They got a couple wins, but then again, Anthony Richardson proved to everyone that he can't stay healthy. He had a very up and down season. Jonathan Taylor, he looked kind of back to normal, although he did fumble the ball at the 1 yard line against the Denver Broncos. You know better. But other than that, I mean, sure, I feel like this was kind of an overachievement for the Colts. They're a team that's just there. I don't have much else to add or take away for the Colts. But I kind of had them at 5-12. And most of the reasons why I had them at 5-12 was I felt like their schedule was a little bit difficult. I ran into a bunch of toss-up games when I did their predictions. Now, if I remember, Colts were one of the last teams that I done when I do my preseason predictions. So looking at this schedule, I did have them beating the Texans week 1, and I had them beating the Titans like late in the season. But other than that, yeah, things didn't look good for the Colts according to my own predictions. But they overachieved, so kudos for that, I guess. Jacksonville Jaguars, they went 4-13, and they were the last team to get a win this season. When that first win came against none other than the Indianapolis Colts, a team that they pretty much own in Jacksonville. And they did get another win in London, and they swept the Tennessee Titans. with Mac Jones at that. Trevor Lawrence, what happened to him? Suffered an injury during, I think he had a shoulder injury at one point. Then he suffered a season ending concussion on a very dirty hit by that Houston player. And what do you know? Doug Peterson got fired after the season, and the Jaguars kept Trent Baalke until player and fan revolt, and Baalke had to walk away too. And what record did I have Jacksonville at? 9-8. I clearly thought the Jacksonville Jaguars were the second best team in the AFC South. Part of me still think that, but at the same time, they just 9-8, another 9-8 season back to back. That probably was going to be their standard, but they went. I think they went 8-9. They went 9-8 the year they made the playoffs. They either went to had that same record or they went 8-9 in 2023. And I thought 9-8 again. They're going to be back to the standard. I don't know if that's going to make them playoff contenders, but that's what I thought. I had them splitting their divisional opponents, and yeah, that's pretty much it. 9-8, and I was pretty way off on that. And last but not least, we have the Tennessee Titans for the AFC South, and they were the worst team in the NFL, going 3-14, and they own the number one overall pick this season. Only getting wins over the Dolphins because Tua got hurt, the Patriots because, well, that was easy, and the Texans because Stroud's offensive line was pretty much a turnstile this season. They ended up losing out, and to my surprise, Brian Callahan was not fired. He should have been fired after this one and done dreck. Instead, the Titans fired the GM, who was a black man, by the way, which I know it has some brothers feeling some type of way, but that's another conversation for another day. Well, what record did I have the Tennessee Titans? Not that much better. I had them at 5-12 because I felt like Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, they were great acquisitions at the time for the Titans. Will Levis, I thought he was going to have some growing pains, but he was going to do just enough to hold on to the starting job. And now it's looking like they might move on from that. And wow, I actually had them losing to the Green Bay Packers week 3. That's telling. And then also had them losing to the Chargers, beating the Chargers, beating the Patriots. I did call that. And I'm pretty sure I think they got swept by the Colts yet again this season. But anyway, yeah, 5-12 for the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, I had them at the bottom tier ranked teams. I'm not that surprised about that. Now we're on to the AFC West with the Denver Broncos, and they went 10-7, and they were the biggest surprises of the NFL. They made the playoffs, and they didn't make it far in the playoffs. They were one and done by the Bills, but just the fact that they made it for the first time since winning the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 50, I think the Broncos could take this with their heads held high. No one expected them to be in this position, not myself, because look at my prediction I got for the Broncos. I had them at 4-13 with their first win coming against the Chargers. If I'm correct, they were probably with the last team. I had them at the last team getting a win. I knew the Broncos were in a rebuild situation, on offense at least, but turned out their defense was doing pretty well, and Bo Nix picked up the playbook rather quicker than we all expected. So kudos to the Broncos. You really outshine this 4-13 prediction that I made. Hopefully y'all maintain that. Keep it up. Kansas City Super Chiefs. They went 15-2. They they only had one legit loss on the season, and that was to the Buffalo Bills. I'm not counting that. I'm not counting that Bronco loss in the end of the season. The Chiefs blatantly lost that game on purpose, despite the Bengals. We all know that. But yeah, the Chiefs 15-2. They also have drank that Steelers black magic luck throughout the season. But in the Super Bowl, turned out that luck ran out. Even though I have a conspiracy theory on what happened, that will not be discussed in this video. But anyway, what record did I have the Chiefs? 11-6, which was about the same record as they had in 2023. I had, the reason I had them losing 11-6, pretty much losing to the Chargers and Raiders and getting and sweeping the Broncos. I also had them losing to the Browns because I thought the Browns were going to be much better. I had them losing to the Bucks because the Bucks, I felt like the Bucks are pretty good, and I also had them losing to, I had them losing to someone else, and the Bills because, well, what else was going to happen? But the Chiefs win 11-6, and I know my initial Super Bowl prediction wasn't them because picking the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl every single year, it's just not that fun to me. So 11-6 compared to 15-1, yeah, I underestimated the Chiefs a little bit this season, but I know we all know the Chiefs are pretty much going to be AFC regulars for the next 5 years. Raiders went 4-13 last season, and part of me was kind of disappointed that I thought if they followed their hard-nosed smash mouth football that they played towards the end of last season, I thought that was going to carry through, but they did not have the quarterback to run their offense. Gardner Minshew was not great, even though he broke his collarbone right around week 9-ish. I want to say he broke his collarbone. I know he did it at home. He broke his between week 8 and week 9. I know he broke it and he was out for the season. And had to trust Aiden O'Connell to run the offense. But then he gets hurt. Desmond Ridder ran the offense for like a game. And the Raiders wound up winning 2 meaningless games during the season, which cost them a top 3 pick that they could desperately use on a quarterback. But my Raiders prediction was about 9-8. I felt like I thought the defense was going to overcome some of the Raiders' offensive issues. Remember, Gardner Minshew was not that bad in 2023 in a relief situation. I thought that was going to carry through the next season. I was a true believer in Antonio Pierce, which now he's out of a job, and that's why I had him at 9-8. Pretty much going win loss, alternating from wins and losses. They didn't make my postseason when I did those predictions, but the Raiders, I thought it was going to be a little better than what they were this season. So I was kind of disappointed in the Raiders. And last but not least, we have the Chargers. And the Chargers went 11-6, made their postseason returns, only to have Justin Herbert and Quentin Johnson to melt down in the wild card round. As we found out that Quentin Johnson's hands is just for decoration, and Herbert, he desperately needs some pass catching help. He's probably going to get some pass catching help this offseason. But Chargers, I mean, sure, they charged a couple games early in the season, i.e., losing to the Chiefs early in the season. They did lose to the Cardinals in a last second game. I think they also lost to the Ravens in a close bout. Lost to the Chiefs again because of, well, it was a last second field goal, and that's what the Chiefs did all season. And they got thrashed by the Bucks. But my record for the Chargers this season was slightly under 10-7. And not much to be said. I did thought the pass catching was going to be their downfall, and it was. I also felt like with Jim Harbaugh, the defense was going to make a turnaround, and it did. I also liked the running game with Gus Edwards, even though when I did my prediction, I did not know that J.K. Dobbins joined the team at the time, and he ended up having a really good season for them. So kudos to him. But yeah, I was not that far off with the Chargers. And on that note, that ends part 1 of my AFC Revisited. Stay tuned to part 2 where I talk about the NFC, and I'm gonna have to admit a big, big fat guilt. Stay tuned for that.